listening to CaveRadioBroadcasting.com. The words and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, March 16th, 2017. This is Dave Hooper talking right now. Howard normally opens it up today. And very rare, I don't even know if this has ever happened, he was held up, and I'm on time, which is a total strange occurrence.
Was he held up by a train? Because that would be really weird.
We actually were held up by a train.
I know you were.
So you are listening to Down the Rabbit Hole. It's a Gen Pop Media production. Hello, Dave. Hello, Tony. Hello, Nick. And hello, Catherine.
Hey, how you doing?
It's been a while since we've had you,
no mic.
sporting a mic.
I don't know. Is this on?
It is now.
I can hear you. Also wanted to say hello to a couple of our sponsors. Elder Care Home Care Group. They, behind the scenes, through a couple degrees of separation, have done a lot to help us out. If you or a loved one needs help at home, you can visit their website, eldercarecares.com, or give them a buzz at 734-671-6518. Also at the DCDfoundation.org. Dave, anything you want to say about them?
Go to the website, donate money, so we can continue our work. Close to 501c3, so.
What is that website?
DCD Foundation.
Yeah,
is it the? Oh,
it's
the. Thank you. The
DCDfoundation.org. You can see what we're up to, and check it out.
Tony, well, let's plug your place, unless you don't want to, unless you don't want new customers or something like that.
Plug away.
Well, you plug. You're the man behind the scenes.
Revolution, DCC, Brighton, Michigan. We're actually getting into green alternative fuels. We're doing compressed natural gas on vehicles, and we also do any kind of modifications and hop-ups. And I noticed your truck, Nick, looked pretty nice. I'm thinking, boy, we could have done that for you.
Yeah, that would have been great. I looked everywhere for somebody to do that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, come to Brighton next time, 9944 Weber Street.
Do you do soup-up engines and things like that, too?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
Nick, you want to tell us about your place?
My place?
Yeah.
It's Motor City Marina. It's in Wyandotte. And, 200 boat slips. We've been there this will be my 21st year there. And, if you have a boat, it's a great place to be.
All right. A few, our only shout out, which is to today, is going to be God, Jesus, all the powers behind the scenes that make all of this stuff operate. Thank you for doing what you do and for helping us get awake and then helping us help others do the same. So I want you guys to keep in mind, it is not down the conventional hall. We talk about all the things on this show that you really don't talk about at parties, you don't see on mainstream media. These are the controversial topics that we all secretly harbor some thoughts about, but have been slightly brainwashed into not wanting to discuss, or at least feeling sheepish about it. And this is a place where we put that forum out there.
Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong. So I totally talk about this at parties.
Well, I do too, and I
Maybe
think maybe that's
yeah.
when my group of friends has gone from many to few.
Yeah,
but
my contact list,
That's probably why I'm still single. I
Maybe.
never thought about that.
Yeah, my
It could
contact
be.
list fits on like one page of my phone, so maybe that's what's going on.
because if someone starts nodding at you with like a little bit of a smile, that's when you know you lost them. So, and they're not going to be calling you back anymore.
Or the glazed eyes.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about a couple things. First of all, I wanted to address something from earlier. Dave, this is sort of a one-off from a show from a few weeks ago. We were talking about predictive programming. And for anyone that wants to understand, it's not a fun subject, but it is the reality of our world, how literally evil the people in power are. There are a lot of things that are put on shows like The Simpsons predicting unbelievable future stories like the death, and I'm going to actually say murder of Justice Scalia, the idea that Donald Trump would run for president 15 years before he did it, and what's now called Pizzagate,
Ah.
which is basically a child sex, prostitution, sacrificial ritual enterprise operating through a series of pizza places. And right now, I'll put this one up online, but this is a still from that Homer Simpson episode talking about this very thing where pizza places are being used to kind of lure children in the same way
When was that episode? Do you know when that episode was?
No, I just had the still and I put it up, but it was it's going back long before the story became a story. Now, of course, it's not a story in mainstream media. We're going to talk a lot about the media today, but it's something huge, and the alternative media is investigating it, and they're realizing how literally massive this operation is. And I think it helps explain a topic we actually met Catherine through discussing, which is what happens to all of these children that go missing every year. And she does a lot of work with typically young girls, if I'm not mistaken. Kat, correct me if I'm wrong, that have been involved or been sucked into sex trafficking. And I learned a ton because I always used to, if you're an adult and you're involved in sex, why don't you just walk away? Can't you just leave it? And Kat enlightened us a lot, too. It is not nearly that simple.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty sick, actually. If anybody wants to learn about it, there's a book called The Slave Across the Street, written by Teresa Flores, who was trafficked, and she actually lived with her parents while she was being trafficked for 3 years. And, Michigan is ranked number 2 in the state for human trafficking. And,
you mean in the country?
In the country and in no, I'm just kidding.
Michigan's number 2
well, I
in
mean,
the
the
state
Upper
of
Peninsula
Michigan.
is a state of its own, so no. But yeah, it is an epidemic, and there's been a couple of pretty big busts lately, which is great. There was one in Detroit. A ring got busted up. They haven't caught the ringleaders yet, unfortunately. But it was a hotel on Michigan Avenue. I don't even want to talk about the conditions of the hotel.
Kenny's sitting here going, yeah.
I know right where it's at and what.
The White House Inn or whatever.
It's right. It's at Michigan and Wyoming, right next to a strip club called Club Venus.
Right.
Totally shocking. I'm
They've had
shocked.
my
I'm
credit
shocked
card
that
on
something
file
like that
for
would
And
be
it
in
was
that area.
It was really all over the news. I was actually
My
in complete
good-
shock about it.
Good Lord.
They
And-
busted up a child pornography ring, too, in Canada.
This is ongoing everywhere on
Yeah.
the planet. In fact,
Yeah.
there was a huge one in California that they're not reporting on. Monster bust. Dozens and dozens of people involved.
Yeah, I think
Victims,
very
it's
much
just-
like drug dealers and big drug busts, because at the end of the day, the highest levels of our government are responsible for bringing drugs into this country. And there's a lot of evidence. To say there's a lot of evidence implies that there's a possibility this is true. There is proof, basically, that the Central Intelligence Agency and a lot of their fronts are the ones responsible for bringing in the very drugs that other parts of our government, like the DEA and FBI, fight. It's the Hegelian dialectic, which that term we use all the time. And every now and then they throw a bone to the public. $200 million cocaine warehouse was, discovered, and it makes it look like we're doing our job, but these things aren't scratching the surface. I suspect it's the same for what's happening with some of our kids. Not that we like to dwell on these dark subjects, but there are many ways to find where God operates. One of them, which I think is specific to a few of us at this table, we found him by finding the enemy. In fact, Nick and we talked about that earlier this week. And once you know that enemy's real, this enemy that was written about thousands of years ago, and the evidence is sometimes things, Kat, like you said, things in your own house are happening which you don't necessarily even understand or grasp, can be very, very real. That's how some of us got here, and that's the angle of this whole presentation. Usually, bringing events that are going on in the world, scientific discoveries, archaeological expositions that shed light on words that were written thousands of years ago that seemingly would be impossible but are actually being proven in many different fields, from science, archaeology, history, astronomy, medicine, genetics, biology, etc. So we kind of start there because that's where the real world operates, and we reconcile it with 66 books that make up this Bible, including another 32 that are called the apocryphal books, which really lay out, I believe, the true history of this world and do one thing no other book in the history of mankind has ever done, and that is predict the future with 100% accuracy. I'm not talking Nostradamus 80% accuracy, because if he's influenced by the dark side, they know a lot of the stuff that's coming, and they can sound pretty credible. But the one thing that differentiates God's words from that of your run-of-the-mill soothsayer is there will not be a single mistake in it.
And I just want to speak to that. It's interesting that you brought that up, because I was reading something about Nostradamus the other day, and I can't remember what I think it was only like 10 to 20% of his prophecies actually came to pass. But not only that, if you compare his prophecies to the prophecies in the Bible, his prophecies are very, very vague and ambiguous. The prophecies in the Old Testament that point to Jesus coming are very specific. And there was a group of scientists, not Christian scientists as in the religion, but scientists that are Christian, that they put together a computer program, and they put all the statistics about the prophecies, all the descriptions of Jesus, and they ran it through this computer program, and it came out that there was like a 1 in 2 billion chance or something crazy that.
Because there are 153 that he fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And, you start off, we know the guy's going to be from Nazareth. All right, population of the world at the time, they're different, but let's say it was 300 million, and you've got 15,000 people from Nazareth. So that's one. So he's got to fit that criteria. That's one. And then the second one is born in Bethlehem. And there were recorded history has about, these aren't the real numbers. This is hypothetical, right. But let's say 20,000 people born in Nazareth out of 300 million. So now you have, a 1 in a million chance times a 1 in a million chance. Well, that's not 1 in a billion. And then you keep doing that 151 more times, and you've got a number that is so big, there are fewer atoms in the universe than there are potential chances that Jesus Christ is not who he said he was.
And that those prophecies can't point to anybody else but him.
Nobody. In fact, if you want to pull this one up, there's a prophecy in Isaiah about who this guy, that there's a guy coming. Just look up Isaiah Jesus Christ prophecy. Now, Isaiah was hundreds of years before Jesus Christ shows up. Now, and this interesting show, this guy was on the streets, and as passersby would come, he was doing like a friendly survey, and he would read this passage, which I hope you're going to be able to find, and he would ask the regular Joe on the street, who do you think this passage is talking about? And everyone to a man says, oh, well, that's Jesus Christ. That's Jesus. Obviously, that's Jesus Christ. That's Jesus Christ. And then then he would bring up the point that, that this was written 700 years before Jesus Christ came. Some people, it's just like it went over their head. And a couple of them, it was a jaw dropper. And it is a jaw dropper. I think you found it.
Yeah, I did. But this is so funny that you brought this up, because about a year ago, my cousin married a Jewish woman. And she came over to my place, and I was sharing my faith with her. And, she was claiming, I'm a Jew. Traditionally, I'm a Jew. I'll always be a Jew, and this, that, and the other thing. And so I was just asking her, why don't you believe Jesus was who he said he was? And she's giving me all these different answers. So I got up and I walked over to my Bible and I pulled it off the shelf and I said, would you agree that the Old Testament is part of your book? The people, your people read these books. These are your books. This is your faith. And it's true, right? 100%. Yep, absolutely. And I said, okay. And I read this to her. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. And I said, who is that? And she rolled her eyes and she goes, well, duh, it's Jesus. And I said, yeah, that's in your book. It's in the book of Isaiah, and it was written, like you said, about 700 years before he stepped foot on this earth. And still, she's still just...
That'd be like us today saying 700 years from now, there's going to be a guy. Here's how he's going to die. Here's why he's going to die. He's going to be the most famous person that ever lived. We're going to be able to put all these, and when you're saying these things before the fact, people are, that would be impossible. You can't. But after the fact, this reverse logic comes into play where some of the people on the street in this, this little survey that was being done, reverse engineered their logic on it, saying that, well, it was inevitable that that someone would have come along to fulfill all those attributes.
Right.
Yeah. There's a reason that someone that was predicted to be crucified before crucifixion even happened, without a marketing department, is the most famous person, entity, human being, I don't know exactly how to classify him because he's part God, part human, that has ever walked the earth. I mean, there were I'm not going to say millions, but hundreds of thousands of people were crucified. Can anyone name one or two other guys that were crucified ever?
Right.
No, I mean, that's rhetorical. Anyhow, so earlier today, Dave, you and I were talking about The Matrix.
Yeah.
And you called me, you were all excited because, we talk about The Matrix, which I've often thought is a hyper-realistic metaphor for what is really happening in our world. That, there's very possibly as many scientists from Einstein to scientists that will talk about how we're living in this somewhat of a digital representation. And our conversation today led into what we're going to be talking about on today's show, because you were asking me about the Wachowski brothers,
right?
Who were the brothers behind The Matrix. And I might have let a little air out of your bubble because, I was already...
You already knew, yeah, so I was kind of bummed out, but that's okay.
Tell me a little bit about that, and then talk a little bit about the meaning in the movie, just a lot of the stuff that's in there that has just layers of meaning. And you were going to look something up today. So
well, and I did look that up, and it's heavy. I would need to study it. I guess anyone could put together a bunch of really big words and make it sound like it means something, but I got a bunch of nonsense out of it. But anyway, that we were talking about The Matrix, and the first time I saw that movie, I remember when it first came out, I went and saw it at the theater, and walking out, this was before any of this stuff was going on in my life.
Right.
I just remember in my head saying, that movie was absolutely like a metaphor for life.
Yeah, that's what we talked. Because I remember long before any of this happened, I just was thinking to myself, you couldn't disprove that movie's true. Like, we wouldn't. It's one of those science fiction movies that you cannot disprove, and it's one of the things I love about science fiction.
And I'm not saying that. Now I think we're actually in pods being harvested for electricity by machines, but I do absolutely think there's proof that this is a digital representation. But anyway. Then you brought up before that an interpretation of it is Neo is actually a personification of the Antichrist. Or he's half man, half computer, right? And he's the savior, but not really.
And a lot of movies have that theme where we're seeing it all over the place, like with the Avengers and even Superman. These half human, half godlike creatures keep saving humanity over and over and over. And Neo, which is the word new, and it's also an anagram of one, which is who
right.
Jesus. So,
and he was the one in the movie. So just out of nowhere, I think it's because I saw some press release that they're talking about redoing a new Matrix movie, but it has nothing to do with the original staff. It's going to be like a spin-off because the original directors aren't going to direct it. The Wachowski brothers aren't involved in it.
the Wachowski brothers have disappeared from the face of the earth.
No, they didn't.
Well, this is our
it.
joke argument. They are now the Wachowski sisters.
Yeah.
Well,
I
when I
looked that up, I'm
when
like,
I
what
looked
the
them
heck?
up
They're
because I wanted
women
to
now.
kind of get some background because I knew nothing about these brothers, and it's fascinating because whoever wrote that movie, in one way or the other, is a genius. I mean, that movie is phenomenal. I could watch it 100 times and I get sick of it. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies ever.
Same here.
So I look them up and come to find out they're actually now the Wachowski sisters. They're both trans, and I'm like, okay, yeah, Neo's the Antichrist. That Dave was right. It just kind of settled that.
Did
for
you
me, so.
do you ever notice the new heroes are always young girls? There's Stranger Things, Logan. The new hero is actually a little girl.
No,
Yeah,
that's the
seems-
Wolverine
this seems to
update.
be- this seems to be the new theme.
That you
But
know,
that's cool because she's actually a girl,
yeah.
right? So it's
it's
fine.
interesting because we're going to talk about female heroines a little bit. All of this, so we have that conversation, and I did a little search on.
So you brought up that book that shows up where he hides the discs,
Right.
Right, and it's this philosophical book and from 1980.
Simulacrum Simulation, I believe, is what it's called.
And it was originally published in French. The guy's some French philosopher, and the chapter that they open it to, it says on nihilism, right?
Right.
And I read that chapter today, and it is
Oh, really?
oh, it's wordy like what you'd expect from a philosopher, but what I got out of it, because he actually comes out and admits he's a nihilist, but you have to read it. It's a real thick.
What does that mean? He's an nihilist.
A nihilist?
Yeah.
Well, the dictionary definition of a nihilist is somebody who thinks that life is meaningless and rejects all religious and moral principles.
And that there is no afterlife, if I'm not
so
mistaken.
life is
It's
meaningless.
just-
There's no meaning to it, right?
Right.
This is nihilism.
all life is physical, and when you die, it's dark, lights out, game over.
But this guy breaks down nihilism through history, how it's actually there's old nihilism, like from the Renaissance period to now, which is a different kind of nihilism, and it even seems like he sympathizes with terrorists a bit. I may be interpreting that wrong, but it's you can read it. It's referenced in the movie quite a bit, and a lot of the concepts from it are referenced in there. And apparently, this guy that wrote this took a lot from Ecclesiastes and Plato and a lot of these, so it's, I don't know. It's the nihilist approach is, that there's no God. If he ever was, he's dead, right? It's a really,
it's a dark place to exist.
It really is.
Like if you are a nihilist, it's got to be depressing.
yeah,
And
it
it's
doesn't
certainly,
matter.
it also is a green light for basically doing anything you want as a human,
Right.
Because there's no retribution
Yeah,
ever.
it's the "do as thou wilt"
right, the
mantra.
made by Manly P. Hall, which actually has roots going back.
Yeah,
to
Aleister Crowley
Babylon,
used
actually.
that.
So, anything else you wanted to
No,
say about that?
it was just if
Yeah.
you've ever watched that movie and ever took anything like that away from it, maybe go rewatch it. And all the references in there. I mean, the name of the ship, Nebuchadnezzar, which is an interesting character in the Bible. But that ship is like it's the ship that saves everything. All the other ships are irrelevant, basically, right? It's that one.
Right.
So
Wait,
it's
the name of the ship is Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar,
in
yeah.
the movie.
Matrix, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, heavily biblical. And so
Yeah.
with a movie like that, and any film of meaning that has a closed set, where that's not being filmed out in public where there's actual activity, but where everything is actually put there by design. If you want to get more spiritually awake, pause it on any variety of scenes. Look in the corners of the film, the writing that's on a chalkboard behind a professor, the books that are on a bookshelf of one of the characters in the movie. It's not like the Wachowski brothers said, hey, because the Neo opened up the book, this Simulacrum Simulation, And inside of it, he kept some valuables and some information, which was going to be very key later on down the road. The Wachowski brothers didn't say, just go get me any old book. They specifically wanted that book.
Yeah,
and the chapter that you open up to on nihilism, these are all specific. Those are the subliminal messages that are embedded in almost all Hollywood productions, which I'm starting to view as not all. Some movies are just a love story, and that's just what it is. But these days, what is coming out of the major motion picture studios seem to all have some form of spiritual power behind it, and The Matrix is absolutely one of those movies. And you will find that, whether it's dark side or light side. You guys are smirking. Why are you guys smirking?
She kicked me under the table.
Kicking my foot under
Is that
the
your
table,
foot?
and so
I'm sorry. I thought it was the table leg.
I hauled off and.
If you guys want to play footsie, you don't have to be all covert.
I got work boots on. That's no fun, dude.
Come on, kids.
Okay, so I was doing a little background on the Wachowski brothers because what was going on in my mind while we were talking, I didn't mention this yet, but there's certain traits you find in people that have the public's attention that are typically odd. In the case of the Wachowski brothers, they've got at least a couple of these criteria that I'm going to be talking about today. One of them is two brothers got gender operation changes. They went from being men to women. It's a pretty big deal. And they didn't do it at the same time. They did this, and I don't believe they're twins. I think they're just brothers. Well, whatever they are.
Well, they're brothers.
So one of the things I've observed before is when someone's in the limelight like that, there are a few characteristics you can go look for, and I almost always find at least one, if not several, of the following we're going to discuss. Now, in the Wachowski brothers' case, one of those characteristics is you will have other family members that are in significant positions, either of power or of influence over culture, influence over beliefs, things of that nature. And I was not surprised at all today. I found out that the uncle of the Wachowski brothers is a guy named Lawrence Luckinbill. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Luckinbill, Luckinbill.
No.
Actor, playwright. Now, you probably all have seen him because he played Spock's half-brother on Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. He was the actor that played that. And he's done a lot of stuff with plays. And so two of the characteristics we're going to talk about were in the Wachowski brothers, which is gender issues, identification. And typically they're going to be anti-biblical. And they're going to have other relatives that are in positions of significance that are beyond statistical probability. So, like another example is, I believe, Chuck Schumer, politician. Yes, we all familiar?
Yeah.
And I believe it's his daughter, Amy Schumer. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, these were characteristics of...
She tanked, by the way.
In what?
Her Netflix
she's a pig.
shows tanked.
Well, and if you think of it, she doesn't really fit any preconceived... she doesn't look like a movie star. She doesn't look like someone that would be the lead in a... And it's sort of odd that, yes, she's funny, and I believe she was on SNL, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. Kenny, are you nodding on that? Okay, yes.
She was in a show about becoming Last One Standing. Last Comic Standing, I think was the name of the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, again, by the way, and these characteristics don't prove anything. Sometimes some of the characteristics we'll talk about exist inside of a family, and it does not mean that this is, quote-unquote, like an Illuminati family. But that's what we're basically going to be talking about today are some of the characteristics and examples of generational / bloodline families, not the hyper-powerful ones behind the banks, because these guys aren't working alone. There are, the lower ranking members, families. They're interspersed all throughout our society, culture, not just in America, but the whole world. And so, like I said, we're going to be throwing out some names here of some public figures. They're already public, so.
I'm sorry. Did you say that Chuck Schumer was her father?
I believe so, yes.
He's,
Uncle, right?
Yeah.
Uncle,
he's
okay.
Chuck Schumer is her father's second cousin.
Okay. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if you find out. Well, let's go through some of the characteristics, but maybe I'll bet you there's some other Schumer characteristics we're gonna pull up. So these are some of the indicators that we're looking at. What I'm going to call an Illuminati family. These are descendants of the synagogue of Satan. These are some of them don't know they are, and most may even be doing this through ignorance. But it's not an accident that their fame, that we follow their leads, we buy the things they buy. The Kardashians, for instance. This is not a great example and wasn't even written on here, but Kardashian was one of the lawyers for O.J. Simpson, and he dies, and only later then Mrs. Kardashian marries Bruce Jenner, an Olympic hero, and now their daughters are they're the face of modern day womanhood. They're in pornography. They sell makeup, beauty supplies, and the world is divided on them. But a lot of people think they're absolutely trashy, and so I'm sure some people love them because they're all over television. But so we're going to talk about some of these characteristics. But this isn't proof. It's not an indictment. Maybe a version of an indictment. It's certainly not a sentence of any kind. And we could be wrong, so I'm going to pre-apologize if we are. But these are just some of the ones that popped out that just were in my head today. So one of the things to look for is you're going to see multiple generations or family members that are in unrelated careers, yet they're in the spotlight and they are impacting culture, beliefs, science, things of that nature. They will also be sharing a lot of. We're so out of touch with the Bible, we won't recognize what's anti-biblical anymore. But they are behind anti-biblical ideas. Their work is based on anti-biblical thoughts, things that are in there. For instance, the Wachowski brothers, changing your gender, that's pretty unbiblical. You'll find it heavy, like homosexuality is another one. Members, guys on TV or people on television that are homosexual. Not making any judgments about homosexuality, but these are just some of the characteristics that seem to be very common to these folks. Name changes, gender changes. Wait, what's so funny?
I brought up one of the Wachowski sisters now. I've got it. Lily.
Thank you.
And I brought up Benny Hill in a dress.
Oh, that's good.
Benny Hill.
Boy. Are a lot of these
Boy.
people Jewish?
They are, actually. I think the Wachowski brothers are. I think. I read something. They may have just been an attack by some anti-Semite, but I
think this is actually part of the deception. Is they're Jewish in outward religion, which fuels this Zionist conspiracy, which I believe is one of the layers of deception. Like in 1920, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, they added the of Zion, came out, and that helped fuel the fact that, oh my God, this is a Jewish conspiracy. Because a lot of people see the exact same conspiracy we do, but they don't see it as satanic or demonic. They see it as a Jewish conspiracy. Oh my God, these guys run the world. They run Hollywood. They own our media. A lot of anti-Semitism flows from that. And I personally suspect that this, if you follow the roots back to how Jesus described what is, the people that he labeled as being a part of the synagogue of Satan. What was the criteria? They proclaim to be Jews, but secretly they praise Lucifer. And in the most powerful families in the world, you will find a lot of clues that that is the case. There's a lot of defectors out of these families that realize what they're involved in and, in a sense, flip sides, like double agents. Some of them fake flipping sides. That's a whole, like a guy named Kurt Barker. Look him up, Kerth Barker. I'm not going to get into him, but he's the guy that wrote that expose on how Illuminati families are the wealthiest you can imagine. They practice cannibalism and child sacrifice. Okay, so you think he's very credible, but at the same time, you keep reading his website. He also talks how to tap into spiritual powers to be able to do remote viewing, predicting the future, everything that's demonic.
Right.
So, and this is one of the methods they use is they will gain credibility by, because that's a pretty big confession. So then you're like, oh my God, this guy's real because he's from the inside. He's got details about the Illuminati that, I've noticed them myself. They sacrifice children. And here's this guy saying, we sacrifice children from an insider's point of view. But then at the end, he is still alive.
It's plugging for their side still.
Right. Because even if you get to the point where you realize, wow, the Illuminati's a real thing, and you agree with Kurt Barker, if you don't go the distance and realize that you are literally looking at the seed of Satan, whether spiritual or biological in some way, you may as well never have started the race, because if you don't finish it, your soul is still lost. So okay,
what was the name again?
Kurt Barker.
Yeah, it's not coming up.
Not Keith Barker.
Yeah, Kurt, Kerth Barker. He wrote a book, Cannibalism, Illuminati, Blood Sacrifice, something along those lines. You'll find them. A few other things we'll find. Strange deaths in the family, or deaths in pairs. And there were two examples that I'm going to discuss really quickly. We've talked about him before. Brittany Murphy, if you remember. Mm-hmm. She died of strange causes, and 2 or 3 months later, her live-in boyfriend dies of strange causes, both of them young. Now, you know what? Maybe that could be plausible. It might be. The odds that someone her age dies of a freak accident, let's say, are 1 in a million. And then to have it happen again to someone in the same house is another 1 in a million, and you take 1 in a million times 1 in a million, and you're now there's a 1 in a billion chance this was an accident. So it could be. It could be.
Yeah, except for, before she died, she was expressing concerns that, quote unquote, people or they, I forget the exact quote, were after her and they were trying to poison her, stuff like this.
Thank you for bringing that up. I didn't have that in here.
Yeah. And, she died of a heart attack, which is odd because she was like 35 years old or something like this.
And you mentioned a 35-year-old. Do you guys remember a reporter named Jessica Savage?
Yes.
Why do I remember? Yeah.
1980s, young, up-and-coming, beautiful woman. So this is another example. This woman dies at 35 in a car accident. A few weeks before she died, she did a 43-second segment on the news where she looked, and you can look it up and see it, she looks discombobulated, drunk, like there's something wrong. And then there were rumors spreading about her that were verified by one of her coworkers, a lady named Linda Ellerby, that the executives at whatever NBC was it?
I believe it was NBC.
I think so too. That she was suicidal. She something disturbing happened to her, and this happens to a lot of Hollywood folks. It's not just Britney. Yes, it happened to Britney Spears, where she goes and shaves her head. You'll see this happen to so many of them. Where
Shia LaBeouf.
They have these breakdowns, whether it's an MK Ultra screw up, or all of a sudden you realize what it is you're involved in. I mean, I got freaked out by this stuff for a while. I know I probably I didn't shave my head or do anything drastic like that, but it freaked me out. A lot of actors, Wayne Brady, see another one, he running outside with a gun. They're trying to kill me. They're trying to kill me.
I think that was
Dave Chappelle going to Africa in the middle of a $50 million. He's like, I think they see the same things that we see from inside. And, when you see that, it's... So
was it Wayne Brady or Martin Lawrence?
Look
or
it
both.
up. Or both. Educate us. So Jessica Savage, I was just looking into her, and I don't know why specifically I was thinking about her, but here's a few strange things that happened with Jessica Savage. So she was a very popular news broadcaster, moved up faster than, hyper speed. By the age of 30-something, she's in front of the whole United States. So some of the strange things that happened to her. Her husband, of just a few months, had killed himself 2 years earlier. When he died, she was 33 years old. Now, she would die 2 years later. Her father died also at the age of 33. I don't know if this is related, but she was doing an expose on Jonestown and was also working on a 1981 espionage documentary. And Jonestown, we now know, was a CIA operation, basically to see how a group of people are going to react to cult leaders. I'm not going to get into that today, but that's documented. Just go look it up. And again, just because you didn't hear it on your mainstream news, we're going to give you plenty of reasons more today to stop watching that news and being influenced by it. The documentary was called The Spies Among Us. Like I said, 3 weeks before her death, she did a 43-second segment. She appeared drunk and on drugs. So when I say that she was in a car accident, people are thinking, well, she's probably drunk, right? But you know what? She wasn't driving the car. So isn't it strange that she was a passenger in this car, yet the rumors were circulating about her potential suicide before it happened, as if someone was planning. Stranger still, she was at dinner at a place called Chez Odette, and this was somewhere Pennsylvania, Philly area, I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, and Kat, I totally thought of you. Odder still is her date, a guy by the name of Martin Fishbein. He was the VP of the New York Post. Now, here's another guy in media. They had dinner at this restaurant, Chez Odette. For some reason, she gets in the back seat of the car while he's in the front. This is how they found their bodies. The car went off an embankment, fell into a canal, and water poured in, and they died of asphyxiation.
That never happened to me.
No, but she was in the back seat with her dog, whose name was Chewy.
Oh,
no, that's weird.
Now,
wow.
They had left the restaurant, yet her dog was in the car. Strange. No alcohol or drugs. They determined that they each had a half glass of wine, so that drugs weren't involved in this.
That's the weirdest thing of the whole story. Who has a half a glass of wine?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Her show, because she was the host of Frontline before this, was taken over right after that by a lady named Judy Woodruff. And if you go look up Judy Woodruff at Wikipedia...
Bob Woodruff?
I don't know that. You can help me find out. But the very first description of who Judy Woodruff is after Frontline is she's a member of the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations. Now, that's another one of the criteria that you're going to find in these families. They're going to have membership or association with the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergs, and or visits to Bohemian Grove, the meeting venues of the elite ruling class. Did you find anything else on that was interesting, Tony?
I'm looking up, see if there's a connection, but yeah, it says CFR on her information.
So I already talked about Linda Ellerby. She was a co-worker, and Linda Ellerby, after her death, Linda Ellerby is also a journalist, was talking about how rumors were circulating that she had wanted to kill herself.
They are related.
Bob Woodruff?
They are related.
And Bob Woodruff is...
He's with the Washington Post right now, right? I think he's.
Is it now or again? You're going to see these again. They're not in plumbing supply businesses, but they probably work at the Department of Energy. These are the people that help get fluoridation into the water. These are the people that might work at NASA. They're They're going to be the leaders in their fields. They're going to, not all of them, again, because the wheat grows with the chaff, so it's hard to, you can't just do a blanket statement. Jessica Savage had 2 biographers whose names escape me right now, and that's not important. But you just look up Jessica Savage on Wikipedia, and the 2 biographers' names will come out.
I think Jessica Savage was actually the character for the Will Ferrell movie.
Oh, you stole my thunder. It's great.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. Great point. There were actually... So 2 things. Her 2 biographers also made another claim that she was bisexual. Here again, another one of those criteria coming in where your average person typically, I'm going to guess, is not bisexual, but here's someone that's now starting to fulfill many criteria. Freak death, died. I suspect she was supposed to be killed when her husband was killed at the age of 33, and something happened. Her husband at the time, what the heck was his name? He was Dr. Donald Payne. It was a suicide in the home, yawn, yada, yada, very old story. But her biographers claimed she was a bisexual and a drug addict. And there were at least 3 movies that were made based, and that's another thing, they will make a movie on their life that will sort of form the general consensus opinion of what their life was truly like. Celia Ward played Jessica Savage in one of them. The movie was called Golden Girl, The Jessica Savage Story. Some of you guys might have seen Up Close and Personal, which was loosely based on her life. It had Michelle Pfeiffer and Robert Redford. And then, Tony, you got the last one, Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, which Will Ferrell had a lot of his inspiration behind that movie was the Jessica Savage story. Christina Applegate playing the Jessica Savage character. And for you Detroiters, what's interesting is, you guys remember Mort Krim?
Yeah.
Mort Krim was...
Of course.
Ron Burgundy was based on Mort Krim. When Mort Krim and Jessica Savage, they used to work together on the news, Mort Krim started off disliking this girl because she's basically hot, has not gone through all the, she hasn't been tested as a journalist, and all of a sudden he's sharing airtime. They end up becoming friends. Mort Krim comes to Detroit, friends to the point where he read the eulogy at her funeral. So the Mort Krim isn't so important to the general public, but if you're a Detroiter, you know who Mort Krim is. So Ron Burgundy is based on Mort Krim, and Christina Applegate's character is based on Jessica Savage. So in a sense, immortalized. With media, you will also find this. Not only will you find biologists, geneticists dying in droves, like the astronomically impossible numbers. Yes, maybe some of them are true accidental events, but very much like the astronomer's cable car in 1991 on the way to that French conference where 20 of them had gathered and they were going to make this presentation. We are going to make an announcement that's going to change the world. Well, we never heard the announcement because, of course, the cable car broke and all 20 of them died. Very similar to SEAL Team 6, who supposedly were involved in the recent execution of Osama bin Laden, which when it happened I turned to my ex and said, "Oh my," because I already knew Osama bin Laden had died probably 10 years prior in the hills of Tora Bora, and I'm like, every SEAL Team 6 is going to be killed. Just watch. And what happened over the next year or two is in 6 different freak incidents, SEAL Team 6 was completely wiped out. The big one was landing in a hot zone in an old beat-up Chinook without air cover, and anyone in the military knows that that's just never done. A bunch of them were killed at separate incidents at a gun range. Like, these are the most expert weapons handlers in the world. To have this happen 2 or 3 times in a span of a few months. One was stabbed in a parking lot.
Yeah, but one guy's still...
The one's Rob.
One's alive.
All over TV, everywhere.
And what did he...
He's the claim to be the shooter.
Yeah, he's the one that shot.
Yeah, well, so that's what he claims. He's selling a lot of books. There's no one alive anymore to refute his story.
Right.
That's something interesting. It got me thinking about journalism. You guys know who Michael Hastings is?
Not really.
Michael Hastings, he is investigative reporter. He was doing an expose on Obama, and he was about to show. He had told several people he was going to be holding a press conference because he'd had evidence that Obama's birth certificate, in fact, was fake, and he could prove it. Again, strange car accident. His car, with no brakes, no nothing, drives into a tree, catches fire, blows up, a lot like Paul Walker, also dying at a young age. His friends say he was murdered. And WikiLeaks, several years after the fact, shows that CIA Director John Brennan was specifically out to silence several investigative reporters, Michael Hastings being one of them. So it was interesting that so many journalists, like scientists, astronomers, biologists, die these mysterious, unnatural deaths.
Well, you talk about car accidents. I just want to throw a current events. I think this was yesterday. Might even been today. You know Roger Stone?
No.
Roger Stone's been the one that's been outspoken about the CIA and all these connections with the Trump and Russian. He wrote the Clinton conspiracy, the Clinton books. He was on his way to his radio show. He was reportedly poisoned with plutonium or
some radioactive material.
Some radioactive material. He was poisoned by that, and it didn't kill him. This was several months ago because he's supposed to be testifying about the whole Russian link being fake. So he got in a car accident. He got T-boned on the way to a radio station for an interview, to do this interview, and he survived. He made it, and he actually went to the interview. But the car that hit them drove off with minor damage. Their car was totaled, hitting the side, and their plate was obstructed. So
interesting.
Tinted windows, the whole.
You just reminded me of. You guys all know who Bill Cooper is?
Yes.
You got to check into Bill Cooper. So Bill Cooper was gunned down by Arizona Marshals. Department of Homeland Security was there. Several other government agencies. And the head of the Marshals that was there at his shooting, I believe was innocent prior to the fact. He'd been given sheets on this Bill Cooper guy living in Eager, Arizona. This guy was an armed militant. He was radical. He was all the buzzwords that freak us out. Bill Cooper was famous for many reasons. He wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse. 76 days before 9/11 happened, he was already saying on air that Osama bin Laden is going to be blamed for some terrorist event. Don't you even believe it? He actually, inside sources prove now that he was supposed to be killed on the night of 9/11, but because he was broadcasting late into the night and they didn't want to do it on a live radio show, they ended up doing it 6 weeks later, and that's when he was killed. Now, the head of the Marshal Service, whose name escapes me, and Tony or someone, maybe you can find this out, he starts looking into his own, the arrest that he led. Because he's like, as he starts finding out about the now dead suspect, Bill Cooper, he's like, wait a minute, this guy wasn't bad. He was just had a radio show. He was just speaking the truth. Yeah, okay, some of his ideas are a little out of, what we consider conventional. And he was pushing for an investigation of who the heck was behind the police reports saying that this Bill Cooper guy is ultra dangerous. We cannot let him get back into his home during the arrest because he's got the whole place wired for to explode, which was not the case. So this sheriff is pushing for an investigation of how did all these agencies get coordinated behind us at the arrest of Bill Cooper. He was in a parade one day on a motorcycle, and an unidentified car ran him over and kept driving. Again, someone shut up for trying to... Doesn't bode well for what we do on this show, huh? Because as long as our audience is not massive, we're okay.
Yeah, nobody cares what we say.
We're going to talk about a few more of the characteristics to look for. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back, and we are going to talk about examples, real-life examples. Some other things to look for are illogical name changes, like John Voight being the father of Angelina Jolie, as an example. The They'll be affiliated
What do
with...
you have on Angelina Jolie? Because she was just in front of your latest speech today.
No.
She's a member of the CFR.
I
She's
did
an
not know
She's
that.
an ambassador or something to the
United
CFR.
Nations. That was going to be another characteristic, is affiliation with the United Nations or something that is pushing towards a one-world government, which is what the Bible warned against, that this would be the work of the devil. And, again, you'll see these common characteristics. We'll talk about that speech after the break, Tony, but see what you can find on that. There will be child abuse in the family, either of themselves or of their children. The death of a child, early death of the self or death of a child, usually sometimes attributed to sacrifice. The number of household name figures that have a child that is dead is something in the order of 100,000 times greater than the average population. So something's going on. It doesn't tell us exactly who is corrupted, but taken as a whole, there is something strange going on with this group. Association or enrollment in some of the best schools. Yale University is a big one. It's a feeder system to the Central Intelligence Agency. Other Ivy Leagues, like the Bushes, for instance. That's in America.
Columbia.
Yeah, Columbia, for
yep.
sure.
Cornell.
Yep, Harvard. And across the Atlantic, Oxford, Eton. There will also be membership, secret society affiliation somewhere along the way. And it's either gotten public or you'll see the secret society signs, the strange poses in front of certain pictures. Links to Nazism, like Prescott Bush funding the Nazis, and then his own son becomes the president of the United States. Think about that for a minute. The son of the most key financier of the Nazis became president of this country. Or, say, Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose father, Gustav Schwarzenegger, was Austrian police chief, Nazi officer. Here, his son, who doesn't speak a lick of English, not even born in the United States, he's not just a movie star. He fulfills another characteristic, which is career hopping in the limelight, to go from movie star to governor of the largest state in the United States. And he will also find him attending Bohemian Grove meetings. I don't think these things are accidents. New Age ideology, horoscope channeling, mystic associations, like Shirley MacLaine, made famous for that line in the movie I Am God, where she's, like, I control my own destiny, I am God. And, of course, her brother's Warren Beatty. And you look into her, you're going to find a lot more stuff like that. Multiple members with heavy influence on culture and beliefs of society. Family members with multiple honors like Nobel Prizes, knighthoods, being named Sir, Academy Awards. These organizations that are created by these dark entities to kind of give credibility to each other back and forth. And membership, appearance at CFR meetings, Bilderberg meetings, Trilateral Commission meetings, where the elite essentially get together to plan everything out for, the sheep, which we are. So those are some of the characteristics. And does anyone have any others that they want to...
Did you mention the Rhodes Scholarship?
No, that good one. Very good one. And there's a story about Rhodes himself. Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, and a lot of those guys end up entering our intelligence agencies as well. Is it break time, Kenny? All right, let's take a break.
One more for the break.
All right.
I just found out Rachel Maddow was a Rhodes Scholar.
Interesting. All right, because we're going to be doing some name dropping. We're going to give you some jaw-dropping examples of families that are in the limelight that you don't even know about that are related to each other, and we'll do that after the break. Back.
Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. Well, it took hell or high water, but I made it.
He's back.
I'm back. You
Yay.
can't keep me away. You can throw all you got at me, Satan, because I'm just going to keep coming back and talking crap about you. All right? So, you know what? I tried to listen to the show, but I was having trouble. I guess I don't have the Cave app, and it wasn't just playing on my phone like it used to. So I don't have a clue what you guys are talking about, which is really not unusual by this time in the show.
Yeah, you're about to find out.
Okay, so what do we got? What's going on, dudes?
So we've been talking about in general, characteristics you'll find of people that we would say are most likely or highly likely, not always in all cases. We could absolutely have some of these wrong, but we went through a list of characteristics that you'll find running in families throughout generations, throughout different members, that are very odd, yet they all seem to be grouped when you look at the people that are in the spotlight in our world. Homosexuality, gender issues like the Wachowski brothers, links to Nazism, links to New Age, Rhodes Scholars, Ivy League schools.
You're being politically incorrect. They are now just the Wachowskis.
I don't care. They're brothers.
Yeah. Jews, people that are Jewish in outbound name and religion, but we discussed that many of these you can actually follow their bloodline back to the synagogue of Satan, the money changers, these people that pretend they act as if they're Jewish, but they really praise Satan. That's out of Jesus' own mouth, and I trust what he has to say. And in fact, Catherine, you were just pointing out someone I was not planning on discussing, but Tony had mentioned Rhodes Scholars, which is a big one. That's something you guys should look into. Anything we talk about on the show, by the way, is just a little. These are all little clues, entry points, and we don't do this to make money. I mean, we all have real jobs in the day, so this isn't like some kind of multi-level marketing scheme. We're here because we've been touched. And then, so you showed us a picture, Catherine.
Mm-hmm. Yep, of Rachel Maddow, her senior picture.
But she kind of looked hot.
She's beautiful. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think Rachel Maddow may have been a model or something of that nature. I'll look it up right now. But no, I was just pointing out how different she looks now,
So this is a woman. She does a financial show for, is it CNN?
It's MSLSD.
MSNBC.
I mean, look at her now.
And she's professed, acknowledged, public. She's a lesbian, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Either. Okay, so some of the criteria: Rhodes Scholar, awardee. I wouldn't be surprised if you found she's got relatives in other critical fields that impact.
Her dad was in the Air Force. He was a captain.
We ain't not high enough up to make a difference.
Yeah, you. There is a big crossover with military children of military. If people that claim to have been in the MK Ultra program, almost all of them. In fact, I don't know if I know one that doesn't have this characteristic. They're a child of a military family, just for what it's worth. So we're going to start to get into some examples of these, and along the way, we'll probably be adding a few more characteristics. And if there's any ones that you guys want to add, please do. We mentioned female heroines. Nick brought up this concept that woman power in movies is growing. In fact, do you guys know who the first female lead of a major motion picture, the heroine, was? We studied this movie when I was at Michigan. It had happened in the recent past from 1989, 1990. The first
in a movie?
Major motion picture, the first female hero.
I don't know.
Ripley from Alien. And then Alien.
She was the first female hero.
That's how it was taught to me. I have not gone through to verify it. Kenny's saying yes. Okay. So, Sigourney Weaver. That's the actress. Now, what's interesting, her father, Pat Weaver, he was the head of NBC. Head of a news division, has a daughter that becomes a movie star. Not only that, one of the characteristics you'll find are these links to Rome. To Rome, either in name, in paganism, in the same ritual sacrifices they used to do. They'll still, many of them have been publicly outed for being involved in them even to this day. Pat Weaver had a son who he named Trajan. Roman emperor, by the way. And he used to call Sigourney, before she had a name change, he used to call her Flavia, which is an offshoot of another Roman emperor. And remember, the Bible clearly discusses that the Empire of Rome will not die. It will go hidden, it will secretly rule the world, and it will become public in the last days. So here again, this is another one of those signs to look for. She changed her name to Sigourney based on a character in The Great Gatsby. And there's something up with The Great Gatsby. When a story is pushed over and over, for instance, we're getting 25 Batman movies. But don't you think they would have done, for instance, and so many remakes and remakes and remakes. Why haven't they, for instance, done a remake of The Bionic Man? I mean, wouldn't you go see that today if they did something
It was
like
a
that?
terrible TV show.
Oh, you
I used to
kidding me?
love that. The $6
No
million
way.
man, dude. We have
That's why I
technology.
didn't do it.
The
I
intro
love that.
song alone, I want to use that music, and that intro song is off.
I don't know how many times that when I'm doing something, you go. "Doo, doo, 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 doo,
That's
doo."
what we used to do that in grade
didn't
school,
they
man.
do
It was
a
awesome.
Bionic Girl?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Bionic
Jamie
Woman,
Summers.
The Bionic
No,
Woman.
no. They did. I swear they did some CW did some Bionic spin-off in the last 15 years.
Yeah, that was it. That was the.
Well,
No, it wasn't.
Sci-fi
it wasn't the
loving
Bionic-
guys like
it wasn't the
ourselves
Bionic Woman
don't really know about
because
it.
she was shortly after the Bionic Man. $6 Million Man. Then there was the Bionic Woman, which was Lindsay Summers. But I swear there was some kind of reboot in the last 15 years.
Oh, I don't know.
You're right, Howard. In 2007, there was a TV series.
Don't F with me on TV series.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I don't
Okay,
remember.
we covered
Was it,
Arnold.
was it supposed to be their daughter or something?
It just says
We
it
can
was a
rebuild him. We have the
re-imaging of
technology.
the original
It's
TV
awesome.
series.
Knight Rider, $6 Million Man. Come on now.
Knight
No,
Rider.
it sounds to me
Knight
like
Rider
she put-
never
she-
needs to come back.
Oh, dude, that was
She played the
awesome.
Oh,
same
show.
dude, I
character.
hated that show.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Come on, really?
I'm 10 years older than you, man.
Oh, that's true.
I was
you are.
playing guitar.
Yeah, no, I was. Knight Rider was awesome.
Yeah, I'm 10 years older than you.
A-Team,
dude.
come on.
Love the A-Team.
Okay, cool, okay. Sorry.
Not going on no plane, animal.
Yeah.
She played the same character in the 2007.
Okay.
All right, so Kat, you brought up Rachel Maddow, news anchor. Lesbian. I suspect you're going to find that she's got some family members that are prominent, but I don't know. I'm just guessing.
She's Jewish, or her dad's a Jewish, but her dad's a Jewish.
And
Her
she
dad's-
probably had what was her original name? I'll bet you that was changed too.
It doesn't look like it was.
And there are so many actors and actresses have changed their name from a Jewish sounding name to a Anglo-Saxon.
Her last name's different. I mean, it was like, where is it at? It was like Maddow. Oh, Meadow. I can't say this. Medvedoff.
Okay.
So that was the original family surname. It was an Eastern European Jewish family. But her mom was of Dutch Protestant background from Canada. And she stated that her family's very, very Catholic. They grew up in a community that her mother described as very conservative. She was an athlete. No shock there. Most lesbians are. And I don't mean anything by that.
But most Catholics aren't public about it. All right, so let's talk about some more. You guys know who Gloria Vanderbilt is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper's son.
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper's mom.
Yeah.
Fits several of the
Mom,
criteria.
We
Immensely
knew you
wealthy.
could've
Heavy impact on pop culture, fashion. And fashion is very important. Now, that is an industry you're going to find. Again, not plumbing supplies or golf club retail centers, but certain industries that impact who we are, what we do, what we believe. Heavy involvement. Anderson Cooper, two completely separate industries, two family members with massive impact on the public. And Anderson Cooper is also an acknowledged homosexual, too. Another criteria.
Really?
Immensely
that I
wealthy.
did not know.
Oh,
You
really?
didn't know just
You didn't
by.
know that?
Dude, I haven't paid attention to the news in a very long time.
Good. That's
Wow.
actually good.
My gaydar's terrible, and I knew that just by looking at the guy.
Really?
Yeah, I've got good gaydar,
I
but
have terrible.
I did not pick it up
Gaydar
with
just was said twice.
Cooper.
That's awesome.
The Barrymore family.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you've got children, like child stars.
Yeah.
You got Lionel Barrymore.
Yep. John Barrymore, Uncle.
John Barrymore. Now, was it John or Lionel that was in what my favorite Christmas movie is with... come on, he played Mr. Potter. Mr. Potter. It's a Wonderful Life. He was the villain of that movie.
Okay.
I guess you guys weren't big fans.
It's a
of it.
Wonderful Life is not one of my favorite.
Not my
movies,
favorite
so.
Christmas movie. No.
So you got multiple generations of families making it in an industry which everyone wants to get into, it seems, and the odds of getting into it are small. You wouldn't think nepotism should work because it's based on appeal, but statistically you're seeing that it's actually based on who you're related to. Another family that's true for one of the most famous Hollywood families, the Fondas.
Yeah.
Jane Fonda, Henry
Yeah.
Fonda, Bridget Fonda, Peter Fonda. Multiple generations, multiple members in the spotlight in industries which they statistically shouldn't all excel in. Now, of course, some of these could be truly innocent, and we talked a little bit about Shirley MacLaine.
Did you say the Coppolas?
No, that's
No,
a
that's
good
a good
one
one.
because
Yeah.
that includes Nicolas Cage, name
Yeah.
change, Sophia Coppola.
Francis Ford.
Yep. Shirley MacLaine's brother, again, Warren Beatty, married to Annette Bening. Their father was a guy named A.A. MacLeod. So there were several name changes that went on between A.A. MacLeod, Shirley MacLaine, Warren Beatty, bringing in mother's maiden names. He was, I'm sorry, not her father, her uncle, and he was the head of the Communist Party of Canada. Major,
Wait. Whose father?
The uncle of Shirley MacLaine and Warren Beatty
Yeah.
was one of the most prominent members of the Canadian Communist Party. Born in 1902, died in 1970. Again, maybe, but you also have Shirley MacLaine. She's very new age. She does not believe in God. She believes, though, we are reincarnated, and she'll be on Larry King Live talking about that several times. You can go find those.
Let me ask you a question on that. Do you think that anybody from the outside can ever get into these?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, I was just wondering what you thought of that.
It's the dark side is not operating free. There is a light side still. God is in the world, and he puts. I personally think that guys like Mel Gibson are
Clint Eastwood.
from the light side. These guys are behind the scenes, well-known Christians. Who was the actor that did The Passion? Played
James
Jesus?
Caviezel.
That's right.
Oh my! He did a presentation at a college.
It
You
was
can YouTube
the
this.
one in it's a Texas church. Is it the one where he
He
prays
gives a
for them
speech in Aramaic.
In Aramaic, yeah.
Ooh.
It's at a church in Texas. I was in tears. It's so powerful. He is on stage in tears as he is praying for these people in Aramaic. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And when you watch, not to hijack everything, but this was huge for me watching his stuff. When you watch, there are some behind the scenes Q&As about what went on during the filming. He had broken ribs. He had pneumonia. He was
really suffering. Right.
When they did the crucifixion scene,
His shoulder was
dislocated. There was literally a doctor saying he needs to go to the hospital now. The medic on the set.
Yeah.
And Mel went to Jim. He's like, dude, we can delay shooting. And Jim's like, no, we have to finish this movie. What if I go to the hospital and don't come back out? We have to finish this movie. That's how dedicated he was to making the movie. Not as an actor, because he thought it was important as a Christian to tell the story in that fashion.
Yeah. In another interview, he actually talks about how he's pretty spiritual, and he's definitely down with Jesus Christ. And he's like, he felt he was being shown just a small piece of the pain that Jesus Christ actually went through, and he had this internal conversation. He's like, I am not leaving this set.
Yep.
Like, if this is
his life was in jeopardy. They were afraid he was going to have a heart attack because of what was going on with his body and the conditions and everything else. They thought he was primed for a heart attack, and he refused, finished shooting, then went to the hospital and collapsed.
Now, I'm going to tie that to something that Tony shared with us today, because if you know, as The Passion of the Christ was coming out, right around that time, what happens to Mel Gibson?
Yeah. Drunk tape surfaces.
Surfaces. Then his girlfriend tapes him. You know, the most embarrassing stuff. And, God, if you would have recorded me on my most embarrassing days, dude, they would have run me out of this state years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost like this coordinated effort to discredit Mel. And it still is in many people's heads. It's still at work.
Yeah, and the thing is at the time, for me personally, I wasn't where I'm at now spiritually. I was buying the media hype that it was just a vanity project, and Mel Gibson had gone completely insane because that's what the media was saying. So I was buying it, and then all that stuff, I'm like, oh, yeah, yep, Mel Gibson, good Catholic, drinking, I was buying the whole thing. Now that I look at it in retrospect, with the blinders taken off, I realize it was nothing but a spiritual smear job on the poor guy.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons I think it's written all over the Bible. Close up all those doors, because obviously a high-profile guy like that, you let yourself get drunk one night and do something stupid, and the enemy is there and ready to capitalize on it. And his movie was panned for being anti-Semitic, for being But at the end of the day, that movie has probably brought more people to Jesus Christ. I remember long before I even believed.
It's kind of hard to tell the story of the crucifixion and not be a little anti-Semitic.
Well, no, that's the attacks.
I didn't realize, because I blame the whole thing on Pontius Pilate. His movie helped start to get me to realize, oh my gosh, the Pharisees and the Sadducees were actually the ones that were really
and it's
behind
in the
his
Bible.
death.
Well,
it's biblical.
that was the media attack. I remember this clear because it was the media attack against him for that movie that he portrayed the Jews as the ones who had Jesus killed. But that's actually what happened.
But that's what happened. But how
he
dare
didn't portray it that way? That's
how dare he? Though?
Right. So that was the attacks. That was part of it anyway. But
what's a fake?
And the rest
news police
claims were that he was calling the officers Jews, right?
I don't know about that. I don't know.
When he was arrested, the claim was that he was calling the officers Jews, and I saw that in a bunch of different programs afterwards. Everyone was making jokes about anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Pilate didn't want to kill Jesus. In fact, his wife had a dream. She warned Pilate not to do it. When he left it up to the Jewish people, he brought a prisoner out. What is his name?
Barabbas.
Yeah.
Barabbas.
And said, which one of these guys do you want gone?
Yeah.
And
they
picked
chose
Jesus.
Christ.
And Barabbas was, by the way, the Hannibal Lecter of the day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This wasn't just like a thief.
Like
right.
Right.
Creepsville
He was
10.
Yeah, he probably shouldn't even be kept alive. He was a nasty man.
So I don't know if this is biblical, but it was in the movie. The Pharisees wanted to change Pilate's comment on the death from he claimed to be king of the Jews, from he was king of the Jews to he claimed to be king of the Jews, which Pilate did not change.
Yeah.
In addition to that, Pilate spoke 3 languages. He spoke Latin, Hebrew, Aramaic. Maybe it was Greek.
Probably
maybe someone can help me on that one. What Pilate wrote actually, and if you understand Hebrew, initials will also give a lot of information, which we lose in all our English translations. And I'm not sure if it was Yahweh, YHWH, but whatever he wrote, the initials of what he wrote spelled out the name of Jesus as the Bible. And I personally believe that guy believed Jesus Christ really was the Son of God. Wouldn't even be surprised to possibly see him in heaven. Because guys like Pontius Pilate, who's been made out to be a villain, certainly by prayers in the Catholic Church, he suffered and died and was buried under Pontius Pilate. His name has been dragged through the mud.
Yeah.
That's when you go look at the biographies of these guys deep behind the scenes, you actually realize, wow, it sounds like they were actually Christian.
You know, the one thing though is the one thing I do notice is that the most flattering, or should I say, the least damning portrayal of Pilate is actually in The Passion, because you also watched the movie Risen, right?
Where he's made out to be kind of
and
a...
he's like a fat jerk.
Yeah, like a
He's
King
like-
Herod.
Yeah.
He has a line in there which I just don't think the real Pilate did, which is, well, if we killed him once, we'll kill him again.
Yeah.
And I was just like...
I mean, I really enjoyed that movie, Risen, but I really found, from spending some time reading about the real Pontius Pilate, I think it was a lot closer with the research that Gibson and company did on The Passion than the fat, grape-eating, beer-drinking Pilate that was in Risen. Otherwise, I thought Risen was a great movie.
Loved Risen. That one has...
Joseph Fiennes is one of the best actors.
There's like some creative outside input, but it actually dovetails perfectly with the Bible. And The Passion, I'm not aware, and I've seen it many times, and I'm now familiar with the story as portrayed in the Bible. I can't really find anything in there that's not biblical. Maybe some of you guys know it, but it seemed to be pretty dead on.
I think it's
accurate.
pretty spot on from what I can.
Now, Kat, you had something.
Well,
you wanted to say.
it says in the Bible, John chapter 19, verse 19, it says, Pilate also wrote an inscription and put it on the cross. It read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Many of the Jews read this inscription, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Aramaic, in Latin, and in Greek. So the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, do not write the King of the Jews, but rather, this man said, I am King of the Jews. Pilate answered, what I have written, I have written.
Right. Okay. All right, so we're going through some examples, and Nick had asked, is everyone corrupted? No. The wheat and the chaff are growing up together, but there are some industries where the chaff congregates. It doesn't. You can't point to any one person and say yes or no. I mean, in some rare cases that might be true, but taken as a whole, you can see where the affiliations, the heart of the group lies, where their spirit lies, and it's in the dark side.
Let me take a quick sidetrack here on this. I have a theory as you guys are talking about it. A lot of these industries we're talking about, and feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong, but a lot of these industries, it seems that the need to be liked is very important to these people. I mean, if you're an actor and nobody likes you, you don't work.
Unless you're Russell Crowe.
if you're in the well, yeah, but still fans love him.
No, I know what he's. Good,
if you're in the fashion industry and nobody likes you, they don't buy your crap. Okay, and I heard a guy on the radio the other day, and he said something. I was like, yeah. They were talking about the PC police, and he was just kind of laying out reality. Okay, is what it is. And they were talking about a lot of the PC stuff that's going on. And he said, well, it just doesn't make sense to me. He goes, look, man, I'm not going to go out of my way to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm not that type of person. That's not what we're supposed to do as Christians. But why are people so concerned with being loved in a world where you're hated? I mean, Christ said, you'll be hated for following me. And these people are reaching out, and the reason why they're being politically correct and the reason why they're doing this crazy stuff is because they're trying to fit in. They want to be part of it. Nobody wants to be, labeled a racist. Nobody wants to be labeled a sexist or, what are the misogynist, xenophobe, homophobe. No one wants to be. It's all about being liked. And as Christians, we're supposed to be hated. So fuck them. Let them hate us.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Because I
won't disagree with that.
Well, I mean, in my life, I try to be. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm politically correct, but I try to be careful with my choice of words. I think there's always a way to say what needs to be said without deliberately trying to offend somebody. So in that way, I try to...
let's just say we got famous or the show got really popular. You could take enough sound bites of things we've said to make us look like the most evil bastards that
you don't
have ever
even need
walked the
sound
face
bites.
of the
I'll
earth.
come in on a bad day.
Right. Yeah, but that's pretty easy to spin.
They're going to look at our views
because
and we're
you could
xenophobic,
just like
homophobic.
Well, just like this past this show right here, they would just have all the sound bites of you saying, "Oh, she's a lesbian,
she's gay,
homosexual,
she's lesbian,
gender
homosexual.
issues,"
Right.
and just bunch that together and take it totally out of context when they don't really know
and they'll
you.
be throwing tomato cans.
They don't know who you like or love or don't. They have no idea. So the same goes for me. They don't know who's in my life or who I'm friends with or So when I say stuff about the Wachowski brothers, not sisters by the way,
that would be the Wachowskis.
I could probably still hang out with them and I would treat them as
the media
humans,
is the most
right?
powerful.
As long as the one doesn't dress like a woman,
And
they both do.
No, I only see pictures of the one.
Oh, no, they're both straight up.
I would do it if the one let me try on her Whoopi Goldberg wig.
The pink dreads are pretty awesome.
All right, so we were talking about how Mel Gibson had been dragged in this seemingly coordinated effort through the media, which ties into. Did you guys see the video that Tony sent today? And I think the film.
I watched the trailer. I didn't.
It
really
was
have
The
time.
Principle, correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
So I watched the second link as well, the 20-minute background. Now the Principle is a documentary where these filmmakers go and they go to the name, face, the scientists of our day, and basically to discuss the possibility of a geocentric universe where the Earth is the middle. And there's a lot of scientific evidence that is piling up all over the place that may in fact be the case. And quick sidebar on that, I think the Copernicus universe is a lie that was foisted on us. It's starting to break down thanks to the internet and the ability to share information. The same way Darwin's theory of evolution is starting to break down and inside of scientific circles. This also was a great example of the media in a coordinated fashion, because if you prove that some of these most unbelievable, well, I shouldn't say unbelievable, some of the most hidden truths, some of the most basic assumptions of our world, such as what shape is it, if you can, with your own eyes, poke a hole in some of these most basic assumptions, Nick and I were talking about this. It will lead a lot of people right into the Bible, like a hyperspace jump into it. So it was interesting because this documentary posited that, if you really listen to what these scientists say, they kind of would agree that it is a very high possibility that the Earth is the center of the universe. But if they want to keep their career, there is no way in hell they can ever say this. So this movie comes out, and before anyone has seen anything outside of just the trailer had been released, everyone, including the people involved in the movie that were interviewed, including the narrator of the movie who was a Star Trek, what was the character she played?
Mulgrew or
Mulgrew.
Yes, exactly.
Kate Mulgrew. Yeah.
All of them, again, in a coordinated fashion, came out saying these guys duped us. They came under a false premise. They took things out of context. I never signed anything. They used fake YouTube videos. And I saw this 20-minute expose, the one you sent, Tony, where he literally breaks down, no, all of them signed a release. They have this here.
Showed the release. He showed the release. Then he showed the film where they documented where he was talking to them, and they were all on board, and they knew everything that was going on, and they said these things, and then all of a sudden, just like you're saying, somebody got to them.
All the scenes that were cut out of the movie, like the behind the scenes, these guys absolutely knew exactly what they were talking about. But Tony, I think your thesis is right. Someone got to them, and it happened within a 24-hour period. It was global. Now, that tells me a few things. People like Kate Mulgrew and Michio Kaku and who was the Arizona State professor that was on there? What an ass. I mean, he claimed that he didn't even remember the interview, which is laughable.
Well, that he claimed he didn't remember it. He claimed that they took statements from different things that he had said, and the claims were just remarkable. And the way they put this together, I mean, it really does. But it follows along with exactly all the things that we're talking about. You know, the things that happen with the media, things that happen with the Hollywood folks, things that happen, you know, with all the kind of conspiracy. You know how the CIA operates. You know how these. So once you see this little pattern of how these people operate, it all falls into place, and you can just follow it step by step. You know, it's like you're talking about the families. You know, the Anderson Cooper comes from the Vanderbilts. Mika Brzezinski, you know, her dad's a CFR.
Yeah, you're right.
Zbigniew,
whatever his
Brzezinski.
name is.
Yeah, all these different people, and you start looking up their names. You look at, like I told you, the Bill Nye thing.
Oh yeah,
I saw Bill Nye. He's, you know, all of a sudden his big thing now is the climate change, right?
Yeah.
And he goes on to this Tucker Carlson show, and at the end of the show, it's like it's really strange the way his personality all changed. You know, he's normally
Tucker Carlson destroyed him.
Yeah, and he basically said, you know, at the end, for no reason, all of a sudden he says, you know, there's a war within the CIA and Trump caused all this, and you know, it turned real dark.
Dude, Bill
and then
Nye
right then
is-
I'm like, this guy's a CIA op.
Yeah.
Right? So I started looking up his name, you know, looking him up. He went to Cornell. Okay. His mom was a code breaker in the intelligence department, right? And his dad did something else military-wise. Just like you're saying, there's a link of all these people. They have these connections, and once you figure that out, it's like, oh, yeah, this guy, this is this.
Yeah,
this
all
is
of a
that.
sudden, Bill Nye came out of the woodwork, man, and he's attacking.
Well, he used to walk around. He looked like he had that Riddler outfit on.
I used to
selling how
love
get
Bill
free.
Nye, dude.
I know he was a
Bill Nye, the
joke.
science guy. He did cool stuff like paper clips and magnets, and you know this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he comes out of the woodwork, and he's like guns blazing. He's doing debates with Ken Ham of Answers in Genesis.
Yeah.
He's mocking the ARC exhibit, calling it the anti-science exhibit, which actually is quite the contrary.
Right.
It is
I
all
actually
about
watched
science.
that second debate.
Oh, did you watch it?
It was.
And I don't know, I'm
It
not
wa-
crazy about
it
Ken
was-
Ham, but
It was unwatchable.
you know, Bill Nye just coming out of nowhere, and his eyebrows look like horns.
I know. He's like angry. He's very
Well, here
angry.
there's
Really
a common
strange.
MO here, and you pointed out that his mother had an intelligence background. Not surprising at all. Now, before all of this stuff happened to me personally, I would watch television and documentaries, and that's where I got the bulk of my information. And guys like Michio Kaku, Stephen Hawking, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's the green guy? I forgot his first name. Bill Nye. Now this is who we see on television, and I mistakenly believed that they represented their fields. Like this
Right.
is the tops of their fields. But when you go in and you start to look underneath the covers, you realize that the majority of those fields of study disagree with the guys that are on television. Like there are many. Theory of evolution. Richard Dawkins is the face. Gets more airtime than he's not even a scientist, by the way. Gets more airtime than anybody. That's what everyone throws out. Well, yeah. Well, what about Richard Dawkins? He's it's evolution. He can't prove a thing, but the vast majority. And think about this. Go verify this for yourselves. The vast majority of the science community does not believe in evolution, and you can see thousands of testimonies of these scientists, these astronomers, these biologists, these gene sequencers, the DNA mappers, that once they understand what's really going on, they do their little YouTube video saying, hey, man, Christianity's real, Jesus is real. I mean, we were created. We did not evolve. Now, those people will never get funding, grants. They will not be on television. They will appear on shows like this, which are alternative media right now is only touching 10-15% of the nation. In the 70s and 80s, there were thousands of media organizations. And the FCC, for a reason, used to have laws that prevented companies from owning too much media. You couldn't own more than 8 radio stations in one market. You couldn't own radio stations and a newspaper. Now, there were reasons for this. Those laws got changed. Thank you, lobbyists. Thank you, Sleeping America. And now what's happened through consolidation, 96% of all media in the United States that reaches the public is controlled by 6 human beings. The heads of GE, Time Warner, Disney, NBC. Who else? It's six companies, period. Now, if those 6 guys, here's where conspiracy theories come in. If those 6 guys are coordinated or following the lead of someone else, which we kind of see lots of these examples, like the movie The Principal, the coordinated debunking of that movie. And you understand how powerful the media is. I mean, it was Malcolm X who said the media is the most powerful thing ever. It can make good men look evil and evil men look good, something to that effect. And I started realizing, wow, the guys that are on television, the Michio Kakus, the Stephen Hawkings, who, by the way, I'm going to repeat this one more time, the man's never uttered a word. There are people claiming to have been in the Central Intelligence Agencies saying that they're behind his recordings. And again, you got to think. You know, we take the Titanic story and just go, oh, okay, ship sank because metal hit ice. But try and cut a thin pan from your kitchen on ice. Whatever conditions you want, prove it to me with even like something that's 20 millimeters in thickness, much less 8 feet or whatever or 12 inches, whatever the thickness was. We don't think anymore. And I was going somewhere very specific with that. Science behind the scenes. I lost my train of thought. Either way, they had mentioned
it. Controlled by.
What's that?
You were mentioning about who everything's controlled by and who's behind all.
Oh, the Stephen Hawking, and we don't think for ourselves. But if you understand how much time it takes a regular, able-bodied human being to do research on the internet, to write something, to edit it, to rewrite it, to have it read by other people, then to make those edits, to go pull books off a shelf, to start to gather the information. If all you have are your eyes to send messages, it's going to take you 20 times longer to write. How he's written as many books as he's written is, you break it down, there's just not enough time to even do it.
Yeah, but you see the setup, though. The setup is you can't say things like that because now you're just making fun of a
you're making fun of a cripple.
Guy.
Here's a good example of that. When I went to Phoenix, all right, I'm with my family, and we're talking about Stephen Hawking, which I got your views on it, and I never thought of that. What you guys are talking about right now, how long it would actually take.
And I think it's one eye, by the way, not both. But
yeah, it's just you really, once you break it down and you get over that hump of feeling bad about thinking that way, right? You start thinking about it, you're like, yeah, how does it logically? It just doesn't make sense. You're going through all the logic, but when I started bringing this stuff out, I'm getting the looks, from everybody in the family. They're all looking at me like, oh yeah, you really, and they're kind of like laughing, like you're going to say that about. I'm like, I'm not trying to degrade the guy,
dude. If we put a speak and spell on Catherine's dog. And had Dave in the background on hooked into a microphone, we could surpass Stephen Hawking's.
But even bringing
if we all believed it and got enough people to say it. I mean,
even bringing that up though is like taboo.
Yeah, it's the setup.
That's
probably part of the reason why it's done the way it's done.
Yeah, sure. And look at something else too. Supposedly NASA built this eyeball communication system back in the 80s. Now, had that really happened? All right. Now, I think that technology has now been developed, but they did it just for him, and for 20 or so more years, they really didn't do anything with it. But imagine had it been real, what they could have done with it. But they just used it for him. For him to.
Well, actually, what's interesting about that is the technology actually was developed in Israel, and he came out against Israel, which I find is ironic, but thought I'd throw that out there.
So that was another thing that was in the principle, and I never knew this. We had talked about the axis, the degree slant of the Earth's axis, which is 23.4 degrees off of true, vertical north, whatever you want to call it, and on a 90-degree angle, 23.4. You subtract that out, and you've got another way to look at it is the Earth tilts upwards 66.6 degrees, and that angle of axis was referred to in the principle as the axis of evil. Which I thought was strange. But I do believe, like, cosmology, astrophysics like that, and evolution, they're being exposed as lies from literally hell. And just because the lie started 500 years ago doesn't change who's responsible for it. The entity responsible for it's been around a lot longer than that. So don't be blown away if you were, because just because we're 5 more generations into being duped, we're just duped. That's it.
And you see so many. There's been so many instances of it proved. That's what I'm saying. I mean, we see it so much. There's so many things because the lies get more and more outlandish.
Well, Nick's here because he can prove with a gyroscope that the Earth is not shaped the way we are taught that it is shaped. And it's not like he's a lone wacko. There are, I would say now, millions of people that are...
Army of wackos like Nick.
6% of the people
That's not what makes him crazy.
Which is a lot of people.
6% is because it was much less than that. And then when the president comes out to make fun of the flat earthers, he's not just saying that out of the blue. Someone's writing that speech for maybe he is, but
well, I remember I was having an argument with a liberal, which seems to be my life since Trump started running for a president, and we were having a discussion. He's like, I trust in science, and I trust in this, and I trust in that. And I'm like, dude, at some point, it comes down to faith. Whether you believe in God or whether you believe in Albert Einstein, at some point, unless you can repeat those results yourself, and we both know that you can't, you have to trust in someone beyond you. That's, again, why I won't enter. That's why I can't do any more with the flat earth, round earth. Until I can get in some type of vehicle, and my Ford Escape won't do it because I've tried, unless I can get in some kind of vehicle that I can get far enough away from the earth to either see that it looks like an ice cream cone,
right,
or it's a sphere, or it's pear,
or whatever
it is, I won't actually know.
Yeah, but there are things.
So I'm going to worry about the things that I do that I can know.
You can scientifically
prove a lot of things. You could just take flat Earth off the table and let's talk about when someone says that to me, right? Like, well, I rely on science. Like, yeah, so do I.
Yeah, me too. I know.
But some people are fooled themselves. It's not that like they're evil, but they're saying I rely on science. But really, what they're saying is I'm believing the guy on television who's saying it's science. Now, what they don't know, and sometimes the guy on television is evil, and sometimes that guy's just ignorant. And that gets, because it's on television, it must be true.
Right.
You know what?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know what I just cannot wrap my head around anymore is the idea that there are still some there's a lot of, quote, intelligent scientists that believe in the Big Bang Theory, yet the Big Bang Theory totally negates the first law of thermodynamics.
Right.
Because
it
the law
apart.
The first law of thermodynamics.
Second law that things break down and get disorganized.
Yeah, entropy. But I mean, the first law of thermodynamics. I mean, you have matter and you have energy. That's all throughout the universe. Matter can be changed to energy. Energy can be changed to matter.
Can't be created. It can only.
But it can't be created or destroyed. Right. So if you ask somebody who says there's no God and it started with the Big Bang, and you ask them that question, and you point out to them that something had to have been powerful enough to be outside, to be able to violate scientific law.
Well, that's why they built CERN.
Right? Well, and here another thing I was going to ask. Why is
that's what they say anyway.
All these headlines I'm looking at say that Stephen Hawking is warning people against CERN and the God.
Yeah, he did, actually.
So I want to cover a couple more examples real quick. You guys know who Rahm Emanuel is?
Yes.
Okay, here's a guy. He goes from the White House, and he has to literally get a few laws broken to become the mayor of Chicago. Do you know who his brother is?
I do. Ezekiel Emanuel.
That's one of them.
Oh, I don't know if he's
another one. Is Ari Emanuel. Name ring a bell?
No.
You guys ever see the show Entourage?
Oh, yeah.
That's Ari Gold is based on Ari Emanuel, and Ari Emanuel is now the co-CEO of the William Morris Talent Agency, in charge of a lot of people. Again, 2 family members, different industry, right in front of the public. perhaps the most famous demonic family, I believe, is the Huxley family. Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. It's a blueprint for the New World Order. He wrote Brave New World, we know that. He also wrote a book called The Doors of Perception, which The Doors, the band, Jim Morrison, they used that book as the inspiration for their name, The Doors. Jim Morrison, ironically, one of those 27-year-olds who ends up dying a freak accident. He is the grandson of Thomas Henry Huxley, who was known as Darwin's bulldog. Before any of Darwin's theories could even come close to being proven, he's out there saying they're true, and that got the ball rolling. He's got a brother named Sir Julian Huxley, who was an evolutionary biologist and was the first director of UNESCO, which is a United Nations department that is basically trying to get a world government installed by education, science, and culture changes. And that is several generations.
Jim Morrison.
Huh?
Tied to Jim Morrison.
Tied to Jim Morrison, who was one of the famous guys that died at 27.
That is a bomb. I never knew that.
All right, so we covered a lot of information today. Kenny's yelling at us to get out. The reason we dwell on this is not to glorify the dark side. It is let you know that there is a spiritual war going on. The only chance you have of winning this war is understanding it is real, and then understanding that the only guy that can get us out of this spiritual prison planet is Jesus Christ. Figure out what he came here to do, folks. That's all we got to say this week. We'll see you next week on Down the Rabbit Hole. Take